One tomato contains enough seeds to feed a family for years. 100 years ago, every household knew how to do this. Now, almost nobody does. The knowledge wasn't lost by accident. 12,000 years ago, families in the Fertile Crescent gathered around clay vessels, not just to store grain, but to protect the seeds of next year's survival. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient seed bags at sites like Cat El Hoyuk, each one filled with carefully selected wheat and barley, proof that seed saving was not a lucky accident, but a deliberate technology. On the other side of the world, in what is now Arkansas, indigenous communities tucked away caches of domesticated squash and chenopodium, ensuring that the best traits, size, flavor, resilience, would return with every planting. For generations, this was ordinary knowledge. Whether in medieval European seed fairs or colonial American farmsteads, saving seed meant a family could replant without spending a cent. The practice was so common that as late as 1860, nearly 9 out of 10 US farms still grew their own seed. The savings were real. A single tomato, properly fermented and dried, yields enough seeds to start dozens of new plants. Beans, corn, and squash, known as the Three Sisters in Haudenosaunee tradition, were selected and replanted together, each crop supporting the others, each seed improving year after year. An elder from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy describes walking the fields at harvest, choosing only the healthiest ears of corn, the plumpest beans, the fullest squash, and setting them aside for next season. This was more than thrift, it was stewardship, a way of shaping plants to thrive in local soil and climate. Over centuries, these cycles of selection built a living archive, a household seed vault adapted to each family's needs. What was once routine is now rare, but the evidence remains. Seed saving is not just ancient, it is practical, resilient, and within reach. A single tomato, sliced open on a kitchen counter, holds more than dinner. It contains the future of a garden. Inside one ripe fruit, there are often 150 to 200 seeds, each capable of producing a new plant. With just a handful of tomatoes, a gardener can save enough seed for years, all without spending a dime. Compare that to the modern approach. Today, most households buy seed packets each spring, often paying anywhere from $50 to $200 a year, depending on the size of their garden and the varieties they choose. For some, that is a small price for convenience. But for Maya, a home gardener in Ohio, the math tells a different story. One season, she tracked her spending: $68 on tomatoes, $24 on beans, $30 on squash, plus another $40 for herbs and greens. Nearly $170, and that is without factoring in shipping or the cost of replacing failed starts. Yet the numbers don't add up for one simple reason: nature gives more than we remember. Open pollinated and heirloom seeds, when saved from the healthiest and best tasting plants, don't just reproduce, they adapt. Over seasons, they learn Maya's soil, her weather, her pests. Each year, the seeds in her envelope become more resilient, more productive, and more tailored to her backyard. Commercial hybrid seeds, on the other hand, are bred for uniformity and yield, but their offspring rarely match the parent. Saving seed from hybrids usually leads to disappointment, plants that don't resemble what you grew before, or that fail altogether. That is why seed companies advise buying fresh each year, and why most of us now accept seed as an annual expense, not a household asset. But the old method still works: letting tomatoes ferment for a few days in a jar, rinsing the seeds, drying them until they snap between your fingers. These steps cost nothing but a little time. The result is a homegrown seed vault, one that can feed a family for decades and break the cycle of yearly spending. In the end, the biggest difference isn't just what's saved in dollars, but what's regained in control. In the 1950s, plant breeders began crossing inbred parent lines to create F1 hybrids, plants that delivered bigger harvests and identical rows, but hid a catch inside their genetics. Seeds saved from these hybrids do not breed true. The next generation splits apart, producing unpredictable, often weaker plants. For the first time, families could not rely on their own harvest to supply next year's seed. Instead, they returned to the store, season after season, locked into a cycle of annual purchase. This biological shift was reinforced by policy. The Plant Variety Protection Act of 1970 gave breeders exclusive rights over new varieties, especially hybrids. Under this law, farmers and gardeners could no longer freely save and sell seed from protected plants. The Act introduced plant variety protection certificates, making it illegal to replant or share most commercial varieties without permission. A historian of seed policy describes how these legal boundaries, layered atop the genetics of hybrids, turned what had been a household right into a regulated privilege. The result, seed saving, once a birthright, became a legal grey area. With each new restriction, the tradition faded from ordinary life, replaced by a market that expected gardeners to buy, not save, their seeds each year. By the late 20th century, the story of seeds had shifted from stewardship to salesmanship. Seed companies, backed by new legal tools like utility patents and the World Trade Organization TRIPS agreement, began to treat seeds less as a birthright and more as proprietary products. Marketing campaigns promised gardeners performance in every packet and guaranteed results, framing the act of saving seed as unreliable and old-fashioned. Convenience became the selling point, reinforced by the annual rhythm of catalogs and, later, online stores that made buying new seed each spring feel like progress. But the real cost went far beyond the checkout line. As households stopped saving their own seed, the world's crop diversity began to vanish. The Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that since 1900, about 75% of the genetic diversity in food crops has been lost. In the United States, the number of distinct vegetable varieties in commercial catalogs plummeted from thousands at the start of the 20th century to just a few hundred by the 1980s. Each lost variety meant not just the disappearance of a flavor or a color, but the erasure of centuries of adaptation, resilience, and cultural memory. Seed saving was never just about thrift, it was about keeping options alive. Now, with most gardens planted from the same handful of commercial strains, the living archive that once fed entire civilizations has thinned to a fragile thread. On Maya's kitchen table, an old clay pot sits beside a cedar box. Their surfaces are worn smooth by years of careful use. These are not relics, but living tools, echoing methods that stretch back thousands of years. Across continents, families once relied on low-tech containers like earthen jars, bamboo tubes, and wooden chests to keep seeds dry and viable. The science is simple. Clay breathes, absorbing and releasing moisture to maintain a steady environment. Cedar and bamboo repel insects and slow decay. In humid climates, seeds were sealed in woven boxes lined with ash or leaves, each layer a passive barrier against mold and pests. No refrigeration, no plastic, no electricity, just knowledge passed from hand to hand. Even now, a handful of rice or beans stored in a cool, dark corner can last for seasons. These timeless techniques are not just history, they are blueprints, waiting to be revived in any home. Maya's seed-saving routine begins at harvest. She moves through her garden, picking the 6 healthiest, most productive plants of each variety. The rule of 6, which keeps a backyard gene pool strong. For tomatoes, she slices open the ripest fruit, scoops out the seeds and their gel, and pours the mixture into a jar with a splash of water. This isn't just storage, it is fermentation, a step that echoes both ancient practice and modern science. From 48 to 72 hours at room temperature, natural microbes break down the gelatinous coating that would otherwise block germination and harbor disease. Each day, Maya stirs the jar, watching as viable seeds settle to the bottom. When the mixture begins to form a thin film, she rinses the seeds, dries them on a plate until they snap cleanly, and tucks them away for next year. Trials show that this simple fermentation increases germination rates and helps ensure a healthy crop, proof that even today, the old methods still deliver. Seeds face 4 relentless enemies: heat, moisture, light, and oxygen. To outsmart them, ancient and modern methods converge on the same science. Dry seeds to 8 to 10% moisture, then seal them away from air and humidity. For centuries, families mixed wood ash, bay leaves, or neem into their storage jars to ward off insects and mold. Today, A simple glass jar with a silica packet can do the same job, creating a microvault that preserves life for years. Seed libraries now take this further, pooling saved seeds in community collections. But even these grassroots efforts have met resistance. In recent years, legal challenges have cited federal seed laws to halt public seed sharing, forcing libraries to stick to unpatented, open-pollinated varieties. A seed librarian in Illinois remembers the day a letter arrived demanding compliance with the Plant Variety Protection Act, a reminder that even sharing carrots and beans can be tangled in red tape. Yet the movement endures. On the other end of the spectrum, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault in Norway guards more than 1 million samples in permafrost, a planetary backup echoing the household vault on a global scale. Whether in a kitchen cupboard or an Arctic mountain, the message is clear. Saving seeds is not just possible, it is essential, and it belongs to everyone. 12,000 years of seed saving shaped our food and our future. Then it vanished, not by accident, but by design. Today, most households buy what their ancestors adapted for free. As food costs rise and diversity shrinks, the lost skill remains a quiet power, waiting to be reclaimed. Your thoughts?